The cause of World War II, Adolf Hitler is considered one of the most powerful and infamous dictators of the 20th century. His political life began in 1919 when he became a member of the German Workers' Party, which transformed into the National Socialist German Workers' Party in 1920, and he became party leader in 1921. The obstacle to Hitler's election as chancellor was his stateless status from 1925 to 1932. In order to overcome this obstacle, he was appointed by Minister Dietrich Klaggs, then Minister of the Interior and a member of the Thule Society, to the Brunswick Representative Office in Berlin, where he was granted civil servant status and naturalized German citizenship. In 1933, he became chancellor when he was appointed head of the newly formed coalition government. In 1934, he took over the office of President of the Republic and created the office of Head of State, the Führer. His dictatorship ended with his suicide on April 30, 1945. On September 1, 1939, he started World War II in Europe with the Polish campaign. He was closely involved in military operations throughout the war. Without further ado, let's start with his life story. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20, 1889 in the town of Braunau-Emmern in Upper Austria, part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which was predominantly German, to Alois Hitler, a customs officer at the time, and Clara Polzel, his third wife and second cousin. He was the fourth of Alois' 6 children. He was born an Austrian citizen. In the summer of 1892, the family moved to the German border town of Passau, where their father was appointed head of the customs office. In the spring of 1895, the family returned to Austria and moved to Rostragut in Hafeld, so that Hitler attended the 1-grade primary school in Fischlum from May. In July 1897, he moved to Leonding, where he completed the 2nd and 3rd grades and finally the 4th grade. He was considered a good and intelligent student. From 1900 onwards, KK State Realschule Linz, he showed an unwillingness to learn and twice missed the performance target and did not pass to the next grade. He despised the religious education of Franz Sales Schwarz, only geography and history lessons from Leopold Pach interested him. And he emphasized Pach's positive influence in Mein Kampf. In his high school days, Hitler liked to read the books of Karl May, whom he admired all his life. His father had chosen him for a career as a civil servant and punished his reluctance to learn with frequent, unsuccessful beatings. In 1904, his mother sent Hitler to secondary school in Steyr. There he was not promoted to the 9th grade because of his low school grades. Due to a temporary illness, he left the secondary school without any qualifications and was able to return to his mother in Linz. Hitler did his primary education in his hometown. He started his secondary education in Linz. At the high school he attended in Linz, he had to repeat the 1st grade. At that time, he was at odds with his father, who wanted him to become a civil servant in the future, and said he wanted to be a painter. He skipped classes he didn't like and wasn't interested in them at all. In the future, he criticized his teachers very harshly, stating that he only liked his history teacher very much and that he owed him a lot. Adolf, who was very confident in his drawings and paintings, never stopped resisting. In his book Mein Kampf, Hitler describes it as follows: "I excelled most in history and geography. It was at this time that I became a nationalist and learned to understand, comprehend, and penetrate the true meaning of history. My tastes did not lead me to a life similar to that of my father. My gift of speech began to develop through the persuasive, or rather cajoling, speeches I gave to my childhood friends. I became a small leader who could hardly manage myself. By the way, I can also say that I was a good student. Studying came easily to me. In my spare time I followed singing lessons with the Lambach-Chanoine." Hitler was adamant about becoming a painter. He was very confident in his dreams of becoming an artist. Nevertheless, he felt that his father was right in his advice about the struggle for life. He agreed with his father, who believed that his son should have a good profession where he could earn money safely. At the age of 13, his father died of a pulmonary hemorrhage. Hitler then suffered a serious illness and, on doctors' advice, took a year out of school but was unable to return due to financial problems. With the responsibility of taking care of his mother, he started working as a laborer in construction. During this period, he continued to draw. Hitler would later describe these times, "For me, the problem of my vocation was to be solved much sooner than I had anticipated. For my father died suddenly when I was only 13 years old. A stroke of paralysis struck him down when he was at his strongest. He ended his life on earth without pain. But it threw us into great sorrow. My father's greatest wish was to help me in my profession to save his son from the privations of his early days. He could not fulfill this wish. But unconsciously he had planted in me the seeds of a future that neither of us had imagined. It was then that the anti-Semitism in the books he read emerged. Although at first he was against this idea, when he started to think that Jews favored each other in all areas such as culture, art, politics, and business life, he began to dislike Jews. He explains this as follows. Whenever a theater performance or a piece of music was exaggerated, I saw that it was a Jewish production, and it was the Jews who exaggerated it. Since they had taken over many fields, they favored each other in all fields. A good German work would not get 5 out of 10, but a Jewish work would get 10. So I decided to become an anti-Semite. When his mother's illness struck, Hitler's livelihood almost dried up and he lived on an orphan's pension. So he decided to go to Vienna. Like his father, he wanted to fulfill his destiny, but not as a civil servant. In 1907, he applied to the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna, but was rejected on the grounds that he was not suitable as a painter and was advised to develop his talents in architecture. Although Adolf would have liked to follow this advice, it was necessary for him to have a technical background and a high school diploma. At the age of 19, his mother died of breast cancer. He spoke of having always had a special bond with his mother and said that he was more saddened by her death than by his father's. After his mother's death, Hitler's only wish was to enter the Academy of Fine Arts. In 1908, he applied once again, but was rejected by the Academy, leaving him completely penniless and with his hopes dashed. Hitler gave his share of the orphan's pension to his sister Paula, and at the age of 21, when the small amount of inheritance money from his aunt ran out, he moved into a homeless shelter in 1909. In 1910, Hitler, who made a living by selling landscape paintings he copied from postcards to shops and tourists, moved to a house for working poor men. It was in Vienna that Hitler first began to harbor anti-Semitic thoughts about many Orthodox Jews in Eastern Europe. Over time, he was influenced by the writings of Lanz von Liebenfels on racial ideologies and anti-Semitism and by the polemics generated by politicians such as Karl Lueger, the mayor of Vienna, founder of the Christian Social Party and one of the most violent demagogues in history, and the pan-Germanist Georg Ritter von Schönerer. Hitler began to claim that Jews were the natural enemies of the Aryan race as he defined it and blamed them for the crisis in Austria. At the same time, he combined his anti-Semitism with anti-Marxism, defining the sharp contours of socialism, especially Bolshevism, whose leaders included many Jews. Blaming the revolutions of 1917 for Germany's military defeat, he also blamed the Jews for the military defeat of the German Empire and the resulting economic problems. His trip to Munich allowed him to avoid military service in Austria for a time, but he was subsequently arrested by the Austrian army. After a physical examination and a plea of contrition, he was declared unfit for military service and allowed to return to Munich. Nevertheless, when Germany entered World War I in August 1914, he urgently asked King Ludwig III of Bavaria for permission to fight in the Bavarian Regiment. His request was granted and Hitler voluntarily joined the Bavarian army. He received 2 decorations for his achievements as a soldier. Ironically, the officer who nominated him for the medal was Jewish. 2 years after World War I, Adolf Hitler entered civilian life with official orders from the army on March 31, 1920. On the same day, Hitler moved into room 41 in the famous Thyerstrasse residence in Munich, as revealed by the renowned historians Alan Bullock and Ian Kershaw, and as is officially known. Next to this room was the office of the Völkischer Beobachter, the most popular nationalist newspaper in Germany at the time, owned by the founder of the Thule Society, Baron Sebetendorf, and later donated to Hitler. After meeting Sebetendorf in person in Munich, Hitler first joined the German Workers' Party and then the Thule Society with membership number 555-7. Emulating Benito Mussolini's March on Rome, on November 8 to 9, 1923, he organized the Brewery Putsch to overthrow the Bavarian government in Munich. He was put on trial for forming paramilitary units against the regular army and overthrowing the legitimate government. On April 1, 1924, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. During this period, Hitler wrote the book Mein Kampf through Rudolf Hess, and the fact that he wrote a book containing his autobiography and ideas while in prison gave him the opportunity to explain the party's future goals to the public. Having voluntarily renounced his Austrian citizenship in 1925, Hitler was still not a German citizen and was in danger of not even being able to stand for election. This was a major problem for him. On February 25, 1932, the National Socialist Minister of the Interior of the state of Brunswick announced that Hitler had been appointed attaché to the Brunswick representation in Berlin. With this comical maneuver, Hitler automatically became a Brunswick and therefore a German citizen and was eligible to run for President of Germany. Easily overcoming this obstacle, Hitler threw himself into the election campaign with great energy. Hitler came second in these elections. On March 5, 1933, Hitler led the country to another general election. During the election campaign, he secured massive financial support from industrial, financial, and insurance giants. In the March 5, 1933 elections, the National Socialist German Workers' Party received 44% of the vote. Adolf Hitler was inaugurated on March 21, 1933 at a ceremony in the Garrison Church in Potsdam. On March 23, 1933, in the parliamentary session of March 23, 1933, the Authorization Bill, the Act for the Abolition of Public and Imperial Distress, was passed. Thus ended parliamentary democracy in Germany. In line with the political arrangements of the new National Socialist regime, the Third Reich was declared by the National Socialist German Workers' Party, which became the foremost representative of the German people. There would be no more real elections, and the National Socialist German Workers' Party would elect the members of parliament. It was this authorization law alone that was the legitimate basis for Hitler's broad powers as Führer. As a result of the broad powers granted to him by Parliament, Hitler became the sole leader of the German Reich after March 23, 1933. He was freed from the pressure of Parliament or, in day-to-day affairs, of President Hindenburg and made him ineffective. Because with this decree he took over the legislative and executive powers. In 1933 he banned all other parties by means of laws passed in 1933. He declared himself the great infallible leader of the Germans, and a part of the German people supported him. After that, Germany followed Hitler until his death. Hitler promised the people that he would get the country out of the situation it was in, and he began to work towards this end. He used Germany's skyrocketing unemployment as a preparation for war to create jobs. He built huge autobahns across the country. The Nazis came to power in the middle of the Great Depression. At that time, the unemployment rate was very high. In 1938, unemployment disappeared in Germany. From the Nazis' rise to power until the beginning of World War II, weekly earnings in Germany increased. Industrial production rose from 56 in 1933 to 144 in 1938. The developments in Germany's economy since 1933, when the Nazis came to power under Hitler's leadership, and the economic policies pursued by Hitler are still regarded today as extraordinary achievements. On August 2, 1934, Paul von Hindenburg died. Hitler then also assumed the office of president. A referendum was held on August 19, 1934 to put his ascension to the presidency to the approval of the people. The referendum resulted in an overwhelming majority of votes in favor of Hitler becoming president of the Republic, while retaining his position as chancellor. In his second year in power, Hitler ordered the murder of many senior SA officers. On the night of June 30, 1934 to July 1, 1934, at least 85 people were murdered by SS officers. It has been suggested that Hitler ordered this to gain the confidence of the army. After the operation, Hitler succeeded in establishing full authority over the army and accelerated preparations to create a powerful German army for the conquest of Europe and then the world. Historians argue that it was a turning point for the Third Reich. Hitler blamed the Jews and certain minorities, such as the Gypsies, for all that was wrong in the country. He succeeded in convincing a part of the German people of this and similar demagogic rhetoric and received great support. In addition to purging Germany of Jewish capital economically, he also took action to expel them from the political and cultural spheres. He rounded up Jews in concentration camps. After those who were able to work were separated, the others were killed in gas chambers and their bodies were burned in ovens. These activities were carried out not only in Germany but also in all the countries that were subsequently occupied. Millions of Jews were murdered in this way across Europe. Immediately after coming to power, Hitler aimed at reorganizing the German economy. As a result of the defeat in World War I and the general economic depression of 1929, the German economy was in serious difficulties. Hyperinflation, extreme unemployment, and the resulting low industrial capacity were brought under control in a short period of time with the economic policies pursued by Hitler. The developments observed in the German economy in the years following 1933, when Hitler came to power, are often regarded as Hitler's extraordinary success. Immediately after Hitler took full control of the government, all trade unions were closed down, all employees were gathered under the umbrella of a labor union, and workers' dues were transferred to the general budget. In an economy where wage increases and the resulting possibility of strikes were eliminated, there was naturally an increase in employment. Declining labor costs and peace and stability in the business world increased the demand for labor. It invested heavily in technological and military fields. After strengthening the Wehrmacht, Hitler began to lay the foundations of the Lebensraum that his ideology demanded for the German nation. First of all, he realized the unification with Austria. Immediately afterwards, he obtained the Sudetenland with the Munich Treaty. Then, breaking the treaty, he occupied the rest of Czechoslovakia with his ally Hungary. It demanded and received the Memel region from Lithuania. The last thing to be done was to unite East Prussia with the main territories and guarantee the territorial integrity of Prussia. On August 23, 1939, he agreed with the Soviets to jointly partition Poland and Eastern Europe. On the evening of September 1, he sent a note to Poland to annex the city of Danzig to Germany, which was rejected. Hitler then intervened militarily in Poland. Later, the United Kingdom and France also declared war on Germany, thus effectively beginning World War II. In February 1938, on the advice of his newly appointed foreign minister, the strongly pro-Japanese Joachim von Ribbentrop, Hitler ended the Sino-German alliance with the Republic of China and instead entered into an alliance with the more modern and powerful Empire of Japan. Hitler announced German recognition of Manchukuo, the Japanese-occupied state in Manchuria, and renounced German claims to former Japanese-held colonies in the Pacific. On the morning of September 1, Germany attacked Poland without any declaration of war. According to the German plan, Poland would be occupied within a month, thanks to troops shifted from the Western Front, and then the army would turn its full strength westward. Poland was the first example of the blitzkrieg tactics used by Wehrmacht generals throughout the war. In a short time, German troops captured Warsaw. The east of the country was taken over by the Soviets, who had made an agreement with the Germans. After capturing Poland, Germany shifted its military power and massing to the west. However, it was unclear among the Allied generals whether Germany would attack, or if it attacked France, where it would attack from. The Germans were not going to use the Schlieffen Plan again, which envisaged attacking from the seacoast to avoid a second Marne defeat. To make the Allies think that they were using a revised Schlieffen Plan, the German General Staff added the Netherlands to the invasion zone. However, the real coup de grace was the armor that would attack from the Ardennes region. Indeed, the Allies believed that the woods in the Ardennes would prevent or restrict any armored attack. But the plans came to nothing. The BF and the French army were defeated by the Germans in 20 days. The Dunkirk evacuation saved some 1,400,000 men of the BF and France from captivity in Britain. The United Kingdom, which would have fiercely resisted an invasion anyway, secured its main territory. Shortly afterwards, the French army surrendered and the collaborationist Vichy France was established. After being victorious on the Polish, Danish, Norwegian, and French fronts, Germany launched a punitive attack on Yugoslavia, which had left the Steel Pact in a military coup, and then invaded it. He then invaded Greece, which was at war with its ally, the Kingdom of Italy, together with Bulgaria. Hitler believed that the German communists were largely responsible for the loss of World War I and made gestures and speeches implying that the Soviets were the main instigators. In Mein Kampf, a political treatise written in prison after the failed Beer Hall Putsch, he openly stated that the German race needed to expand its Lebensraum eastward in order to survive. Stalin, on the other hand, ignored many problems and with the arrogance of the Allies, signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and invaded Eastern Europe together with Nazi Germany. However, some of Hitler's Red Army's problems had emerged during the Winter War. Bulgaria, which had established a fascist government in Romania under the dictatorship of Vienna, entered the war on the side of the Axis powers in exchange for Greek Macedonia and part of Dobruja. Finland, on the other hand, had a limping peace after the Winter War and was eager to regain the territories it had lost. Moreover, the aggressive actions of the Red Army were constantly leading to more radical governments in the border countries. The German army soon concentrated all its forces on the Eastern Front. In late summer 1941, without a declaration of war, the first German troops attacked the Soviets and the four-year Eastern Front War began. America's entry into the war changed the balance of power. The Allies had won the war in Italy, but no real progress against Germany had been made or even halted. Land Europe had to be attacked from different points. At first, a landing in the Balkans was considered against the impending Soviet invasion, but then France was decided upon. In the summer of 1944, the Allies landed on 4 beaches along the Normandy coast and attacked areas such as Caen and Cherbourg with airborne divisions. After bloody battles, the German army was able to stop the Allied army on the borders of Alsace-Lorraine and Belgium. Although it was able to mount major counterattacks, such as in the Ardennes, it suffered a complete defeat and Germany's manpower and resources were exhausted. The Allies gradually began to invade Germany from the west. Hitler's delay in responding to the Normandy landings in 1944 gave the Allies time to secure the coast. On the Eastern Front, the balance shifted as Germany entered the war in Italy and France. As a result of the shifting balance, the Soviets began a rapid advance. Due to the high number of soldiers captured at Stalingrad, the German army was in a weak position. Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, and Finland switched sides respectively. In Yugoslavia, partisan groups took control of certain areas. In the spring of 1945, Soviet troops captured Poland and began advancing in Pomerania. In January 1945, with most of Germany in ruins, Hitler said on the radio, "No matter how grave the crisis may now be, it will nevertheless be governed by our unchanging will." The Battle of Berlin, which began on April 16, ended on May 2. The Soviet flag was flying in the Reichstag. Hitler ended his life by suicide on April 30, 1945. Hitler's most important characteristic, generally considered, was his ability to influence people quickly. This was combined with the propaganda of National Socialism and presented to the public. Hitler was portrayed as a superior person, and he tried to make his audience feel this through his mannerisms in his speeches. The fact that most NSDAP leaders were obsessed with him, and that when these leaders met with the public, it was obvious that their own internal structure was dependent on Hitler, were the effects of the propaganda. Hitler tried to present a combative personality and used body language effectively to give the impression of superior qualities. The stern looks, sudden movements and long speeches were propaganda details. He tried to portray himself as an infallible leader. As Germany's defeat became certain at the end of the war and despair grew, he and his wife Eva Braun decided to commit suicide in Berlin on April 30, 1945. They locked themselves in a room and first Eva Braun bit into a capsule containing cyanide and the poison took effect within seconds, and then Hitler bit into a cyanide capsule. At his own request, his bodies were burned with gasoline in the garden of the Führer bunker, placed in a pit caused by the bombs. It is claimed that Hitler wanted this because he did not want to be captured and exposed by the Soviet army. Before committing suicide, he told the generals with him, "You must never give my body to the Russians, they will make a statue of me in Moscow." In his political will, the first of his two wills, Hitler stated that Germany must never give up the pursuit of the Jews and Bolshevism, which are as dangerous as poison to all nations and to the German nation. For Hitler, this fact would indisputably determine Germany's future. Hitler argued that he was right to enter the war and blamed his generals, whom he accused of being cowards and liars, for the defeat. In his second will, his private will, he asked that a museum be established in Linz, the city of his birth, to house the art he had collected throughout his life. Thank you for watching this far. For more such videos, you can subscribe to the channel and like the video. See you again.